Welcome to OpsTok, the podcast where we explore the intersection of operations, technology, and business excellence in manufacturing, logistics, supply chain, and industrial companies, featuring interviews with highly accomplished operators and owners with your hosts, Sahand and Tom. Presenting special guest Nicole Snurkowski, trailblazer in the world of manufacturing efficiency and growth. CEOs and owner of innovative transformations, expert in TPS, Jidoka, Kaizen, Kanban, and Kaikaku.
Episode of Ops-Tok. We have a special guest, Nicole Snurkowski. I'm your host, Tom Lukowski.
And Sahand over here, Sahand to Judy.
And please welcome Nicole to our podcast, Ops-Tok. Nicole, please give us an introduction to your experience in manufacturing and operations.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Nicole Snurkowski, and I have over 25 years of experience working in aerospace businesses primarily, and then started my own consulting firm based on all that experience with lean transformation. So I don't know how much time you want to give me for this segment, but I can go on and on. So let me know, what else you'd like me to bring to the discussion.
Yeah, please do tell us about how you started with lean manufacturing.
Okay, so how I started was I got a degree in mechanical engineering from UMass in Amherst, Massachusetts, and then I got hired at Pratt & Whitney, and I started there in July of 1993. I'm aging myself here, but but when I started, they had just hired the Shingizutsu Corporation to assist all the United Technologies companies. And they had done some Kaizen events in East Hartford and in North Haven plants, but they hadn't done one yet in Middletown. So I was in a development program on my second rotation when I got thrown to the wolves. I got thrown at the very first Shingizutsu Sensei Kaizen event with the Shingizutsu Corporation. And it was phenomenal. I gravitated right to it. I was really good at it. And my name was being mentioned. Here I am I'm like 24 or so. My name is being mentioned at the executive level in Pratt & Whitney, and I just started there. So after I did a lot of firsts, I did the first one-piece flow cell. I did the first pull system with Kanban, in that same facility. And this was all before 2000. I got invited out to go to Japan to do the Shingizutsu Gemba Kaizen event, where I got to actually do Kaizen in the Hitachi plant, and got even more soak time with the Shingizutsu. And then I was asked to create and run a Kaizen promotion office for the Middletown manufacturing plant. So for a good 7 years, I was working directly with the Shingizutsu Corporation, and they were mentoring me. All of that, of course, rubbed off. I learned a lot of in-depth details of what it takes to apply the Toyota model to any business, any industry. And I was able to take that to all the positions that I had after that within Pratt & Whitney, and then to other companies that I went to over the years in other positions I was in. And I found that, again, I'm just a natural at this. I'm really good at it. It helps if you have a good, strong mechanical engineering degree, so that, and I say this because sometimes when you're trying to change the culture and get people to think differently, you need to devise a method, right? And if you can design something right there on the spot because of your engineering background, it just adds that much more credibility to the whole process. So that's it. I've got many years of experience doing big transformations, and that's really what I like to do. I like to do the big deal. I like to bring the shock and awe to a transformation.
And you mentioned multiple industries. What other industries? So I'm curious to know, what was that plant in Newtown making, what materials, what pieces, and then how have you applied it to other industries too? I'm super curious about that.
So Pratt & Whitney makes jet engines. Mm-hmm. So there's a big three jet engine manufacturers: Pratt & Whitney, GE, and Rolls-Royce. There's other smaller ones, but those are the big three. So I was working for one of the big three, and they fall into the aerospace business. So there's a lot of suppliers, et cetera, that are all making the components that go into a jet engine. So where I was in Middletown, they had the assembly floor there where they would assemble the engines. But the module center that I was a part of created the drum rotors that went in there that basically attached to the shaft and, provide the basically the power to the engine. And then the compression systems in general is the module center that I was a part of. So cases and combustors, rotors and shafts, those were and airfoils. Those were the areas that I worked. So I developed a high level of understanding and expertise for those components within a jet engine. And then when I left Pratt & Whitney, I went to Sikorsky, where they make helicopters. I went to Hamilton Sundstrand, where they make air management systems. I went to MTU, where they're a risk and revenue sharing partner with Pratt & Whitney. And I worked on the development end of it. So I was doing more of the quality side of it, where you have to get to root cause rapidly. So I've found that I've been able to apply these in multiple industries. And then the last 3 years, I was working in the electronics industry as a production manager and then a director of operations. So I went back to sharpen the saw a little bit and get some, hands-on experience in a completely different industry. And guess what? It still applies all the same.
I know. So the reason I kind of keyed in on that message was, I'm in the world of software, and I got introduced to what is based on Toyota production systems for the most part. We have Kanban methodology, all this agile stuff. I got introduced to it in 2008 in the world of software. So we use the same methodology, of course, with some differences, but the same methodology, you can apply it to marketing, content generation. You can apply it to a lot of different things. So I was curious about what some of the other industries is that you've seen it across a large portion of the aerospace industry, and in multiple functions, which is really, really neat.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Right. And I can take any time-based process and bring a massive transformation to it. Because that's what the Toyota production system is really all about. It's you're improving a time-based system. So if you have a customer that wants something on time, I can show you the most efficient way to do that.
That's a great message. And I mean, you can say, bring on any customer that doesn't care about timelines, and then I won't touch that business, right?
Exactly. Well, there are those businesses, let me tell you.
Right.
They do exist. Typically in the development industry, where they're focused on the technology that the emerging technology that they're focusing on, and the industry knows you can't put a timeline on that, but they still would like it done as quickly as possible, of course.
Right.
And within budget, right?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly powerful to say, you can take this methodology and really implement it anywhere. It's just a testament to it. So, you said early on that you were a natural to it, like you really took to it. What do you think was about the whole TPS methodology that resonated with you?
Oh, I gotta think about that. Honestly, it's I'm tenacious, and I'm a natural born problem solver. So when this group of individuals from Japan that I'd never met showed me a different way to look at the world and to make improvements, I was like a sponge, absorbing all of this information. And then at some point I said, wow, there really is no better way to do this. A lot of people say, oh, Toyota, that was back in the 50s, it doesn't apply anymore. And I'll say, no, I can apply this to anything still. And I don't see that ever going away. Even as we go more to AI, still, it's still time-based. And I don't know if you saw that funny video where they had that robot doing repetitive work, and it decided it would rather shut itself down than continue to do that. Did you see that?
There you go. That's the drawback to artificial intelligence. They'll figure it out.
Even the AI does not want to do wasteful work, right?
That's great. I mean, I think it's incredible, in your journey, you learned directly from the Japanese, and then you actually had a chance to go to Japan. What was that experience like? Because a lot of my mentors have had that opportunity when they go to Japan, and it's always interesting to hear that story. What was that like the first time going to see, TPS in an actual Japanese culture in there?
Hard to summarize that because there was just so much. It was my first international trip, and the Shingizutsu were adamant about teaching us what excellence was all about, because they'd come in and we'd have to wine and dine them. And sometimes we'd be like, oh, we have to take them out to dinner again. We have to do this. And once we saw that just the way Japan is, they roll out the red carpet for everybody and the way they treat each other. The hospitality is off the charts. So just to bring that to the nth degree, the woman who made arrangements for my flight, I found out I was going into the weekend and I was flying out either on a Saturday or Sunday, I don't remember, but I was flying out and I didn't have a way to get a hold of her, and I realized I didn't have an itinerary. I didn't even know what airline I was on. I didn't know what time it was leaving. So I had to call a bunch of people. I finally got a hold of her and I said, Gail, what flight am I on? What airline? When does it leave? I just know I'm going on this day. And she said, oh, sorry, just show up at the Delta terminal at 5 a.m. And I'm like, you can't give me an itinerary? Nope, they want it that way. They want, to completely take care of you. So I said, okay. So that's exactly what the experience was, is here I am waiting in line at the Delta terminal. I get there and they magically have a ticket for me, right? And then I finally see where I'm going, and I'm taking, I think we stopped in Portland, Oregon before we went to Japan. And as I'm waiting in line, I look behind me and I see a guy who's wearing shorts, and it's November. And I'm like, oh, he's from Pratt. So I said, you work for Pratt & Whitney, don't you? And he said, yes. I said, I could tell because I see people in the shop wearing shorts when it's freezing. So I just automatically knew it was somebody from, my company. So I started talking to him and I said, do you have an itinerary? Because I was hoping to look at his. He's like, nope. And then we met 3 other people that were all from our company, but from different facilities. Mm-hmm. Nobody had an itinerary. So then we get out there and people show up from nowhere to corral us to get on a bus, and to get into a hotel. And then they would never tell you where you're going. They'd say, show up in the lobby at this time, bring your luggage. So you go to your room, your luggage is magically in your room. You get ready the next day, you bring it down, you leave it in the lobby. And I'm looking, there's like 50 bags there. And I'm saying, is that safe? And they're like, absolutely. And I'm like, how are you going to know which is mine? They're like, we've got you covered. So they must have tagged my bags somehow. So the whole time I was there, I didn't know where I was going until I was there. And it was it was an amazing experience. So I went to several different towns. I don't even know what you'd call them, cities, I guess, while I was there. I flew into Nagoya, then went to the Shingizutsu's world headquarters, got a day of training. And then I think we got on bus. This is back in 1997, so my memory might be a little fuzzy. We got on a bus and then they took us to the Hitachi plant. And I don't remember if that was Yokohama or Shizuoka, but I know we did make a stop in Yokohama, which was beautiful, by the way. And then we did the 3 days at the Hitachi plant. We did Kaizen. I was working 17-hour days doing Kaizen. It was crazy. Wow. And then that brought us into the weekend. We spent the weekend in Kyoto City. And then the next week we did tours of different companies, and we got to tour Toyota on the catwalk. So it was a mind-blowing experience. I don't think anybody would ever be able to duplicate such a thing unless, I guess, even if you're super rich, you know where you're going, right?
Right.
So it was definitely a wild experience, and it taught me, let's put it this way, when I put together the Kaizen promotion office, I saw everybody as my customer, and I just knew I wanted to bring excellence. So that's what I did with the training, with the events, with, making sure that the consultant always had an escort, always going to good restaurants and things like that, and having entertainment on the weekends, really rolled out that red carpet, when I created that office as a result of that experience.
Yeah, that's incredible. The hospitality of the culture, and they just want to take care of everything for you. That's amazing. So, what a great experience to be able to go in there. Now, did you see a difference in the manufacturing plants between plants in America and when you were in Japan? Like, was it a noticeable difference?
Not really. Expect anything that you'd see in the States, you would see in Japan. Yeah. So you'd see, unless it was a complete level of excellence like Toyota, they'd have pockets of excellence in the other companies, in other areas where we don't really want to take you over there. And you can see, oh yeah, I can see why. It looks a little dirty over there.
As every plant tour I've ever done, yes, there's definitely areas you steer clear of. So
exactly,
totally
and not necessarily for proprietary reasons.
No.
Right.
Exactly.
So you mentioned that you are sort of applying those learnings from your experience and really the white glove service that and taking care of everything that you experienced in Japan into your business innovative transformations. What does a typical, tell me a little bit more about how that goes. What kind of clients do you have at what level? What type of engagements, and how do you apply some elements of that service that you saw in Japan to your business now?
I give a tremendous amount of value, a lot more than they're paying for. Even though my price tag, I'm not gonna lie, it is high. When you look at the value, I'm saving companies millions of dollars, and I'm only taking a small fraction of that. So, comparatively speaking, bringing that big value is the first thing you notice. And I'm always looking at my mission is to teach leaders at all levels how to do breakthrough transformation. So my mission is not, let me keep coming in and getting more money from a company and bleed them dry. That's not my motto, right? I really want to teach them to not need me anymore, right? Because if I'm doing a good job, they shouldn't need me. Or if they do, it's more like a sensei where they're like, oh, wow, we're stuck. Let's call Nicole. Let's see how we can move through this. Do we need her support for a single event, right? But the approach that I take with companies is it's from the top down, looking at, where are they well aligned with where they should be focusing? Do they have the right synergy with their leadership team? Is sales working with finance, working with operations, right? Working with engineering? Is engineering designing by part family that makes it easier to produce, right? And get more bang for the buck? And if they're not, geez, I don't know if they're ready for me, right? Because I don't want to have to do 20 different events, and it doesn't make any sense, because what's the next design going to be, right? It's all over the place. But if they've done a good job, at that high level of having that synergy where they're working together and not in a vacuum, where engineering says, I need to design a product that not only meets all the requirements, but also is affordable, can run down the same equipment and use the same people that we have, right? And if they're technological advances that we have to meet, let's still try to stay within some type of standardization. And if we can't, let's make sure it's not a huge change. Or if it is a huge change, is the market able to support that? In other words, are we going to get enough orders to merit having its own cell and its own people, etc.? So I help them see the linkage between what they're selling, so the demand signal, and how they're actually able to execute that on the floor. And so the latest thing that I'm selling, the way I market my business is it's called Zen Sales to Shipments. So I do an evaluation phase where I check to see, do they have a good leadership synergy? How's their culture? Now, culture we know is indicative of how good the leadership's working, right?
Right.
So they pretty much go hand in hand. And then I don't need them to have perfect quality, but do they have a good quality system where they're responding to when defects happen, right? Do they even know what an escape is? Is it happening right in their facility, and what's causing that? So those are the big three things that I want to make sure are at a certain level before I'll even get started with them, because I don't want to waste either of our time or money. And then if that's well aligned, you know, they get a score of 85% or better on my Zen scorecard, right? Then I'll go to the next level, which is to initiate a PSYOP team if they don't have it, in a PSYOP process. And if they already have it, I'm going to evaluate it and help tweak it to be ready for the transformation that we're going to be doing.
And
then,
just sorry to interrupt. What's PSYOP? I'm the techie in this conversation. My operational experience is a little bit limited.
PSYOP is sales, inventory, and operations planning, and it's commonly known in the industry, but sometimes they just say S and OP, not sales, inventory, and operations planning. And then there's other variants where, you know, you're pulling in finance. What I do is I look at have a good PSYOP process and team, and on that team, finance is on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they really need to be looking at, you know, lean accounting and how are they going to look at, you know, their financials from that support a lean environment. So once that is in place, I now train the PSYOP team, right? So the high level individuals in the company, I'm working with them to then create their transformations. So as they go through this, they'll never forget it. Once they do this, they can bring this to any company they work at later on. You know, they'll be able to reproduce it. And one of the things that I do that I pride myself with, that I don't see other consultants doing, is I actually do most of the legwork for them. So I take a simple Excel spreadsheet, and for everything that we do, it's a tab on that spreadsheet. So if they wanted to go back and say, well, what did we base tack time on? Oh, that was tab 2. You know, all that information is in that legacy spreadsheet that I leave them with. And then when we actually transform the cells, you know, there's PowerPoint presentations that I'm putting together for them each step of the way to show the actual transformation and to show that we're meeting the deliverables. And I measure myself, I hold myself accountable contractually to be able to make it through each of those, you know, deliverables that I sign up for. So it's really a partnership. And it's really, you know, companies that want to go to that next level, and it's like this: you get an order in, the order's different than you were used to. You're going to convene your PSYOP team and say, how did this affect us with the way that we're laid out in our factory? It's like, okay, it goes into part family number 3 that's done in this cell. Okay, well, that changed our tack time. So what did that do when it changed our tack time? Oh, it caused it so that we now have to do a Kaizen event to get the time down on all of our equipment and level load it. All right, so we got to do that before it hits. When's it going to hit? 2 months. So it puts them in the driver's seat, you know, to be proactive what's happening in the market instead of just rolling with the punches of what's happening in the market and being in chaos.
Right. So I have a question for you as a business owner, and I'll volunteer my side of it first, and then we'll talk about that. So we're in the business of making software for businesses, right? So tools, dashboards, workflow tools, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, and this is a bit of an admittance, I guess, on publicly. I manage our accounts receivable for the most part on Excel. We charge clients to you know, sort of goodbye Excel. You have modern software to take care of your stuff. Meanwhile, I do this. So I wanted to ask you with that pre-qualifier, and admitting that I don't sometimes, when it doesn't make sense, drink my own Kool-Aid. What parts of your methodology do you apply to your own business, if any? And again, I told you that I don't apply some of our own methodology to my business, but I'd be curious to see, where does it apply to other sides of your business?
Well, it's interesting because what I'm bringing is foundational, you know, and I had this conversation with Tom before, is once I help this company build this well-oiled machine, it's a system.
Right.
And one of the things I teach is, you know, Taiichi Ono said that without a standard, you can't have improvement. And what he was basically saying, that how this gets translated as you learn from the Shingijutsu, who trained under Taiichi Ono, is that you have to create that system, you know, that has all those bells and whistles, if you will, from the lean environment. So it's got Kanban, it's got just in time, it's got Jidoka, right? It's working to tack time, you know, it's level loaded mixed model with Hijunka, et cetera. All those things are in place with your system, and now a change happens, right? You know, maybe your tack time changes, you know, you want to go in a different direction or something like that. That's when you evaluate, figure out the new goal that you have to hit, and that's when you do continuous improvement. So I see there's a lot of misunderstanding where some folks think, oh, well, start simple and do minimal improvements to convert your facility to be lean. It's like, it'll take you 20 years. Who has time for that? Right. And you could be wasting a lot of time focusing on the wrong things.
Right.
Sure, you can say, did we deliver a cost reduction? Sure. Did we save some money? Sure. It's like, but you saved maybe $100,000 when you could have saved 10 million. You know, so it's really, you know, so the foundational part of it is what's most important to me. And most of what I'm bringing doesn't even cost money. In fact, it actually generates money, you know, and I can give plenty of examples where I've done that, where I brought in lean without spending any money at all.
Wow.
And, but then once it's working well, then you can say, how can I automate some of this? Right. And that's where I think you guys would come in to say, okay, so we got this well-oiled machine. How can we bring automation to it to make it go even smoother? You know?
Right.
It's having that base first built out with the lean principles that sets it apart. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of manufacturers, you know, think they have a lean system in place, or they try to, but I mean, I think compared to what actually Toyota has put together with the Toyota production system, everybody seems to fall short quite a bit.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the reason why it's such a hard concept for manufacturers to embrace, or what's the resistance, or maybe is it lack of knowledge, or because I mean everybody will use the buzzwords, right? Lean, continuous improvement. But you know, when you actually really study, you go into a Toyota factory, or you go to a different factory, you see the difference.
So I could put them in by a hierarchy.
Okay.
The first one is, if it's a publicly traded company, the company is already committed to the shareholders what they're going to hit, right? And the company's executives and middle managers, you know, are actually paid and rewarded to actually hit that. So if you're going to come in there and say, hey, we're going to disrupt things and we're going to get a little bit worse before we get better. Time out. No, hold on. We made a commitment to the shareholders. We have to hit it. We can't stop. You know, they'll keep hammering at the tree with that axe when you've got a chainsaw handing right there, right? It's more a risk averse situation coming from the way that we have to satisfy our shareholders. That's number one. And then number two is our customers, right? So we're trying to satisfy the customer and deliver on time at the same time as making the shareholders happy. And those aren't always really aligned well when it comes to executing in the shop. And it's because our financial systems are more aligned with, what the overall business is doing and not looking at what's happening operationally, right? So that's why lean accounting really comes into play. And you have to look at the way that you're rolling things up and looking at things differently so that it doesn't drive you to undo what you just did, right? You make an improvement, you see the value once, and you might say, oh, no, I tripped a little bit. Instead of fixing what was broken, I'm throwing the whole thing away so I can go back to what I was doing before. So it's being averse to risk, but it's also to change. But it's not as simple to just say that, people fear change. It's for good reason, right? It's for good reason because no one wants to fail. And if they don't see your vision and they lack the experience to know this is going to be okay, they have to trust you. That's not going to happen, right? In God we trust, the rest bring data and facts, right? So that's in a nutshell what happens. So I don't know if you know who Art Byrne is, but Art Byrne was CEO of Wiremold, and he's was well written in the book Lean Thinking, and I actually, when I went to Japan, I met people from all over the world from different industries. And I met a man named Manny Malero. I'm giving him 15 minutes of fame here, I guess, who worked for Wiremold, which is in Newington, Connecticut, which was really close to me. So I got to visit his company, participate on his Kaizens, jump in and participate on his tours. They were doing tours all the time. And I learned a lot about that particular industry, which is Wiremold is the protective covering that goes on electrical conduit. It's basically electrical conduit coverings. And so Art is a very world-renowned guest speaker that talks about you need to be CEO. To really make lean happen in a company, you have to be the CEO. And I reference his articles a lot because I agree with that. Because I've made major changes happen in a company at the middle management and even, the lower level executive VPs, presidents. But if the CEO has a different vision and is not on the same page with these low level, even if they're empowered, the CEO has a different vision of where it needs to go, and that might not translate very quickly. And even if you're applying Hoshin Kanri, right, it's still, if especially if you're aggressive like me and you make change happen quickly, it can actually work against you. We're like, oh, time out. We didn't realize we didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? Because we didn't realize that it's a different direction than we're overall heading. So these are the reasons why it doesn't work. So if the CEO is engaged, the president's engaged, the VP, and then all of middle management is engaged, bringing the transformation, then it's going to work. And that's what I do in my model. I make sure that all those folks are not only aligned, they're the steering committee. They are handpicking the PSYOP team members, and the PSYOP team is who I am bringing through the transformation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think even to beyond a transformation manufacturing, I think any of these big initiatives like a digital transformation, we see so many of them so frequently fail. But I think you're right. That starts the CEO. Risk averse is always a huge problem also. And yeah, the fear of failure, right? So like you said, for good reasons. So yeah, that's all very, very insightful to know. And, do you think that CEOs see the value in lean, or do you have to kind of show them the results? Like how do you get buy-in from the CEOs to go on the journey?
Honestly, I can tell immediately when I see a company if the CEO's bought in.
Okay.
If they don't have site-wide Kanban, they don't understand lean. They don't understand the TPS system, because what you're doing is you're adopting level loading. How are you going to adopt level loading if you're using traditional supply chain solutions. You basically have to have control of that. You have to be using Kanban. And the easiest way to start with that is on the big stuff, on the site-wide stuff. And then you can drill down from there as you refine and get into the nitty-gritty in the Kaizen.
That's so cool, because my first job in a factory was setting up Kanbans. So that's really neat to hear. So when you walk into a factory and you see that they're not doing Kanban, you know that they're not ready. Is that correct?
Correct. And it's funny because we talked about technology and software. Well, the company that's reaching for the SAP, or the enterprise resource planning, do you know why that's happening? It's because they've got the hockey stick effect going on in their company, right, where they've got almost nothing going on the first week of the month, and it starts to build up, and the last week of the month, everybody's hair's on fire and they're shipping everything out the door, right? And it just repeats every month. That's so disruptive to the supply chain. You don't have a steady drumbeat that's predictable and repeatable for them, right? So how are you going to smooth that out if you don't agree to adopt smart inventory, right? And that's what Kanban is. It's like a lot of people think Kanban is just in time. It's like, no, Kanban is smart inventory. It is creating a smart buffer to give you control. So a lot of times when I go to an area that's really messed up, the first thing I'll do is I'll bring in some inventory. And I've had a few hand slaps over the course of my career. Why'd you bring in that inventory? It's like, well, we are going to bleed it off, but if we don't have that up front, you're never going to see a system flow, because just as I get it moving, it's empty in the front. So it's going to look like it's not working. And you wouldn't believe how many people are ready to say, this doesn't work, and give it up. So you have to have that buffer in front for you to be able to do flow.
That's the key word, flow. I was just before you mentioned it, I was like, so you're really, sometimes you have to increase inventory to just give it a chance to get there, and sometimes on the flip side, at some point you may have to reduce, but that's I think you don't want to choke it up front, right? So that's awesome. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, what planners should be doing is, first of all, they should be reading this book. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, come on, just in time at Toyota.
They should, there's 6 simple rules here for Kanban. And basically what it teaches them is set the Kanban so that you're going to compare the cell that it's pulling from, right, has a rate that it's executing at. And then whatever supplier is producing this material has a rate that they're able to deliver it to. When those aren't exactly equal, you're storing inventory. And the amount of inventory is so that never runs out, right? So obviously, if you want to now reduce your inventory, you have to get those two to agree, right?
Right.
So not only will you be doing improvements in your factory, you'll be doing them out at your supply chain as well.
Exactly right. It expands not just within your 4 walls. It's really the whole supply chain working together, right? And that's I think a lesson we all learned during all the supply chain disruptions over the last few years. You really find out how interdependent everything is, and how well choreographed of coordination it is to make everything work. I mean, it's manufacturing is a complicated process, and it requires a lot of engineering and coordination to make it happen. We take it for granted, all the things we have, but it's supply chains are just very, very intricate. So that's really cool. I think we're reaching up to the end of our podcast. So I think, Nicole, we really thank you for having us host you on our show. We really appreciate it. If there's if our listeners, would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way to engage you to help with their lean transformation?
So they can go to my website, which is innovativetransformationsplural.org. or they could email me at nicole@innovativetransformations.org. Or they could call me at 860-334-7611. But I'm probably going to respond to email the fastest. There's two links when they go to my website. One is for if they're looking to do a full out change, that's the Zen Sales to Shipments button. And the other one is the Breakthrough Change Community. So that could be a student, that could be a manager, that could be an engineer, somebody who wants to be able to do what I do. I'm sharing all of my training for how to do breakthrough transformation for a very low price. and it makes them also part of a community where they can learn and share with each other.
That's great. That is cool. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. It was a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for being on the show. Yeah, looking forward to connecting. And this 45 minutes flew by, so definitely a next episode or another conversation is in order. Would love to learn from you more and talk again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you for having me. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.